Hey guys, Dratta Arcana here, back with another character build guide. This time for a new game I've been playing, Maneater. So, what do I think of this game real quick? It is a fun game. But first, let's jump into this character build, or shark build. So, I have to admit, in the time that I've been playing this game, there are certain builds that stand out from the others. But honestly, I think that this is probably the best overall build that I can actually put together. And let's actually go into this, shall we? So starting off, let's talk about the very first ability, the teeth. Now, the teeth you get, the shadow teeth, basically the way you get them is that you just have to acquire all the locations in the Dead Man Lake area. So as long as you acquire all of the, in this zone right here, the Dead Horse Lake, you just need to find all the locations in that area, which is super easy to do. You get it super early on. And basically, hands down, they are the best teeth in the game. When you bite, you regain 50 health, and then it has a passive 30% bite damage increase. Note these numbers are different on tier 1 than tier 5. Hands down, best teeth in the game. Next up is the shadow body. Now, I played through my first playthrough mostly with the bioelectric body. And why do I think the shadow body is better? So, let's look at the bioelectric body. Basically, you basically cloak yourself in lightning, and you get damage resistance from projectiles and damage and electrical damage resistance. On lunge, you basically get increased to certain stats, and basically you inflict 20 damage, and you put 6 stun counters, which once an enemy hits 10 stun counters, they are of course stunned. Okay, that sounds great and all. The bone body, on lunge, you basically inflict 60 damage on anything within 2 meters. You get a whole bunch of stats on lunge. While active, you basically get ramming damage, damage resistance, 7 damage reduction. So that sounds pretty good too, right? And then the shadow body. So the reason that the shadow body outplays everything is simply because of this. And keep in mind that each one of these is a separate ability. First up, Shadow Form slows. So when you activate its ability, which is Shadow Form slows the world around you while while also releasing an aura of poison each time you lunge. Okay, so while Shadow Form is active, the world around you is slowed by half. That is significant. That means every single enemy and everything is moving already at half speed. So things that normally are fast aren't really fast anymore. And that's kind of why, first off, its first ability basically just makes it so everything's cut in half. But if that wasn't enough, while it's active, you get 20% acceleration bonus, 20% max speed, 20% lunge speed, and 20% swim speed. Then, if that wasn't enough, on lunge, whenever you lunge, you get 20% lunge speed and 20% acceleration bonus. So what this means is that when you lunge, you basically get 40% lunge speed and 40% acceleration bonus while Shadow Form is active. Now, if that wasn't enough, which is why, so far, we're looking at a difference of you got basically 3 skills on Bioelectric Body. You basically got 3 skills on Bone Body, and that's already 3 skills on Shadow Body. But Shadow Body has a 4th skill. It's the only body in the game with a 4th skill. You release a Poison Cloud that puts 10 poison counters on all creatures within 10 meters. Now, keep in mind, this Poison Cloud also works on ships, so it's guaranteed to hit the pilot of ships. You can hit bounties with it. When you're working on your infamy, this also works on them. So they get 10 poison counters. Okay, that doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that you can spam this lunge ability on one ship multiple times and it'll hit all targets on that ship. Meaning that the moment you hit it 4 times with this, it's already at 30 counters, which is the max. So, counters on all creatures within 10 meters. Okay, creatures suffer 1% speed damage resistance, 1% damage output, and 1% speed minus 1% speed. So, it gets a minus to damage resistance, speed, and damage output. Plus 2 damage per second. Okay, that doesn't sound like it's all that significant until you realize that it says for each counter. When an opponent has 30 counters on it, you're talking 60 damage per second. Okay? That's the equivalent of if I had just did a lunge with the bone body. Except they take it per second. So Shadow Body might not seem like it does a lot, but Poison does a ridiculous amount of damage. You're talking a difference in damage, while on lunge for this one, Bioelectric Body can deal 20 damage. It just does 20 damage. The Bone Body inflicts 60 damage, just does 60 damage. But Shadow Form allows you to build up to 30 pointed encounters, which takes literally no more than 2 seconds on most targets with Shadow Body. You're talking 60 damage per tick. Now, you don't lose the poison counters for 3 seconds. You're talking 60 damage, 60 damage, 60 damage. So it's not really 60 damage. It's 180 damage over 3 seconds. And that's not including any additional poison you are applying. So building it up with Shadow Form is really, really easy on ships. And that's why Shadow Body is by far the best body armor, because it comes with the single best ability. But that also doesn't take into account the additional speed you're getting and the additional slowing of the world. So you're talking about increasing your speed and acceleration and dodge abilities by a ridiculous amount. And that's why Shadow Body is probably the best in the game. Literally for anything. It doesn't matter about using Bone Body or Bioelectric Body, because Shadow Body just single-handedly can take out anything in the game on its own. Next up is the Bonehead. Now you might be wondering, well, if we're going with a Shadow build, why are we using the Bonehead? It's simple. The Shadow Head only gives you 10% lunge speed and 25% thrash damage, while Bioelectric, basically the target boat cannot move for 10 seconds. Honestly, I'd rather just apply poison than stun the boat, because the boat's not going to go anywhere if all the humans on it are dead. Bonehead is just hands down better for just raw damage. Basically, you get 40% ramming damage, 50% ram force bonus, 15% damage resistance, 40% boat crew damage resistance. So it gives you ramming damage and basically damage resistance. Hands down, it gives the most passives out of both of the other heads, making it single-handedly the best head. Now, you get the Bonehead from defeating the Apex Orca, so it's a really hard part to acquire, because that's one of the hardest fights in the game. Okay, next up are the fins. Okay, so let's talk about this for a sec. Bone fins, basically what it does is that on evade, you deal 50 damage on anything within 2 meters. And then damage resistance and ramming damage, basically. Shadow fins, when you dodge, you release a poison cloud that puts 5 poison counters on all creatures within 5 meters. It's basically the same thing as Shadow Form's poison ability. And then you have Bioelectric fins, which give you 100% damage resistance and 70% evade speed. Okay, so we're using Shadow, but why are we using the Bioelectric fins over the Bone fins and over the Shadow fins? Aside from aesthetic, because I really like the way that bioelectric fins look. Well, it's actually really simple. While bone fins is great for dealing damage in a close range, same with shadow fins. They really just, allow you to deal damage in a close range. Shadow fins is better for applying poison. Bone fins to straight up damage to boats. But bioelectric is better because you're getting that damage resistance and evade speed. It also gives you another method of control, which is stun. Not the least of which it looks really, really cool. And if you didn't know, if you press the X button, you'll warp up. If you press square, you'll warp down. If you press R1, you'll always move to the right as you dodge. And that is how the teleport works. So so just keep that in mind. As you can see, it kind of warps you. Okay, so bioelectric is definitely better because combine that with the AoE of the poison of shadow form, you're talking stun buildup and poison buildup, while also inflicting damage. Because the bioelectric also inflicts 20 damage when you do it. Okay, so that's the best teeth, head, electric fins, and shadow and body. Next up is the tail. Okay, there's a couple tails here, one of which is the bioelectric tail. You launch a wave of electricity, inflicting 20 damage and putting 3 stun stacks on anything in its path. Then you got Bone Tail, which basically just increases raw bone damage, tail damage. It literally makes your tail do ridiculous amounts of damage. But it's not as good as the Shadow Tail. And the reason is that, unlike the others, you get a passive 20% max speed, and you get a 20% swim speed. On top of it all, on your tail whip, you release a poison projectile. Now, that wouldn't be all that scary if it wasn't for the fact that it inflicts 50 damage, which is already way more than the bioelectric tail, which only deals 20. Then, on whatever it hits with a 30-meter range, so if it hits something, it splashes out an AoE. When it hits, it releases a poison cloud that puts 5 poison counters on all creatures within 10 meters. So anything close by to the tail will also get poisoned. Basically, this is to supplement your shadow form to basically just continuously keep poison counters up. And like I said, poison counters are a great way of just dealing damage without ever really needing to care about what you need to do. And because it's a ranged attack and it has a 30-meter range, you're talking an AoE that you can fire from a distance and it'll hit the target. And then splash everything else in that target's area to inflict them with poison all over again. So, combined with Shadow Form makes it one of the best ways to build poison. Which poison, by the way, is the most broken way of doing damage. Because like I said, basically they take 2 damage per second for each counter up to 30 counters. Which is ridiculous. Because that is 180 damage at max counters until it starts ticking down. And then when it gets to 29 counters, you're just doing 2 damage less per tick. So it's only going to do 6 damage less. So then it does 154 damage. And then it'll do 6 more damage less. So you're talking about an ability that constantly is always doing over 120 damage for a while. Now let's talk about the organs. Now there's a variety of organs that you can get in the game. Let's go over the ones that are kind of useless. First off, advanced sonar. If you're using a guide, advanced sonar is really, really pointless. And honestly, the 300% sonar radius does help a little when trying to find collectibles. But aside from a collectible hunt tool, it's really not all that helpful. Protein digestion gives you 30% more protein and 30% health on feeding. This is kind of pointless because you build this stuff up at such a rapid rate, it's really useless. Mineral digestion, basically protein digestion with basically minerals. Once again, it really doesn't help. Because you just get this stuff at such a rapid rate. Adrenaline gland, this evolution increases your speed when you are badly injured. I'm not too thrilled about this. You're going to get this kind of bonus anyways. So, amphibious is not really all that good. I find that you can stay on land for a ridiculous amount of time already. Fat digestion, same thing just for fat. Not really helpful. Mutant indigestion is the most worthless of all of them because you don't really need a whole lot of mutagen to level up. Subline evasion is one of the most pointless skills in the game. The only reason I would ever equip this skill is if I simply just wanted to, stroll around the world and take in the scenery. That's really all it's for. Those are all the ones that really aren't that great. Here's the ones that are. Hardy. So Hardy gives 600 max HP, 60 plus 60 boat crew knockback resistance. This is phenomenal because not getting knocked back by the boat crews actually happens when they hit you with things like torpedoes or harpoons and stuff, or when they use explosives. And getting knocked back quickly kind of knocks you out of alignment on your course. So what happens is that if you get knocked back, you might be trying to swim in a straight line, but they knock you back with an explosion. You kind of get knocked off to the side, and now you kind of have to readjust yourself. So this helps in preventing that. Next up, reinforced cartilage, 15% damage resistance. It sounds straightforward, but actually the increase in 15% damage resistance is actually very significant. What it actually does is decreases the damage of when you get hit, not your actual armor rating. So it doesn't really help the defense rating in that regard. Basically what it does is that it actually reduces the damage. Brutal muscles. This evolution increases your swimming speed and the damage of your tail whip. This is by far the strongest ability. Now real quick, how you get hardy is you get it from the where is it? You get it from the level 2 infamy quest, and then the reinforced cartilage is from gathering all of the you gather all of the locations in my PS4 lagging. Okay, you gather all the locations in the Gulf. This is what gives you that damage resist. It's actually really simple to do. You can basically, as soon as you hit level 10, you can get all these locations. And something to note too, all of the locations are obtainable by the time that you reach the Dead Horse Lake. The moment you get the Dead Horse Lake, you can access the entire map. You can be level 4 and acquire the entire shadow set. All you have to do is be level 4. That's all that matters. And then you got the brutal muscles. This comes from actually beating all levels of infamy. You get it from the last boss on the infamy quest line, which means that it is quite the grind, but once again, doable without even really doing the story. You basically can become this powerful aside from the bonehead, which you get from the Apex Orca. All of this is obtainable before even doing the story. So if you really want to push it out, you can basically build this without ever doing the story. The only issue with that is that basically you can only level up to being an adult, and when you're an adult you can't use the heads anyways, so it's kind of worth it. You can basically acquire all this stuff way before you start the story. All you have to do really is reach level 4, then reach level 10, and then that's it. Which, by gathering all the armors and parts and stuff, you'll hit 10 anyways. So anyways, guys, that's going to about cover it for the best character build that I have found so far in this game. It is a really fun build. Basically, what you do is that you build up your shadow form. And then when you get the shadow form to max, basically you pop that against like a group of boats or whatever. I have a gameplay video with no commentary that kind of shows how this works. So go ahead and watch that if you want to see this build in action. Note that is on a separate playthrough that does not have the bonehead, but you'll see how shadow form and bioelectric really comes together. So anyways, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care, and if you liked, subscribe and like this video. Otherwise, take care, everyone.